Hi, I'm Lisa with Ivy Lane Home, and today's project is this beautiful R-Way dresser. Now, I found it locally for $120. It actually came with a glass top, but for some reason there's, like huge gouges on the top. So obviously they weren't using the glass top because these are kind of some of the deepest gouges I've seen. I've never actually refinished this brand before. You can see it has some original details, but wonderful construction. It's got really cool design. Besides the top, it's in beautiful condition. You see it has the dovetails drawers, gorgeous hardware. I do have just, some areas here and there of scratches, pretty much in line with the age of the dresser. So the top is honestly the worst. You can see it has this really cool detail underneath. I think it's more of like a French Empire type of design, but with the original hardware, so many beautiful little designs. So I'm going to start by stripping the top and just seeing if I can get those scratches out. I'm using greenies. This is a non-toxic stripper. You sometimes have to leave it a little bit longer, but after I've kind of let it set for an hour or so, come back with my carbide scraper and scrape as much off as I can. I'm trying to get down to raw. So everything I can get off now, it helps me later, so I just to do less sanding. You can see I'm going offset just a hair, just a couple degrees off, just to kind of get some of those stubborn areas. I try to be really careful along the edges because it can be very delicate, that end grain. After I have it scraped, I'm going to clean it off and come back with some acetone and some 2/0 steel wool and just try to get as much of that finish off as I can. I'll use my pocket scraper to work on the edges to get that finish off as well. I'm kind of doing things backwards today. I stripped the top and then I'm going to work on the drawers. I'll remove all of the hardware, put it in a Ziploc bag, and then I'll get that cleaned and polished later. Once that all dries, then I'm ready to do a rough sand. I'm using my Festool orbital sander on 80 grit. I'm going to do a rough sand over the entire thing. And then once I have that done, then I can kind of assess and it's going to get out some of those deep gouges. The gouges were still pretty deep after even stripping and sanding. I'm going to try to steam out some of those scratches. You use that steam and it'll kind of expand the wood grain fibers and hopefully get rid of some of these scratches. Once that's dried, I'll go back over and sand it. Now I'm going to move on to 120 grit. I'll go over the whole thing, then I'll dust it off and I'll finish off at 180. Then I'll pause to decide what I'm going to do next. I'll finish by cleaning it off with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water. It'll clean up any contaminants and then reveal any imperfections that I might have that need to be sanded out. So this morning this is looking really, really red. Do you see all this bleed through I have? So I'm not great at identifying woods. I asked people on Instagram. I thought either cherry or mahogany. I had one person said, oh, absolutely cherry. One person said absolutely mahogany. So I don't know, it's just major bleeding. And you can see the areas that had the big gouges, they're better, but you can still see them over here. And then I had some ones here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a round of oxalic acid and just kind of try to even out some of these tones. I'm going to go dark on the top, so I don't think it's a huge problem, but I'm going to try to get it as even as possible. So you want to make sure you use your mask on this one because those little tiny particles can get in your lungs. You want to be really careful to use your proper PPE on this one. I just pour some into some hot water. I'll brush it on, but I'm just going to uniformly put it over the whole top, let it dry out. Then you need to rinse it 3 times with water to actually stop the bleaching process. You can see that it even dyed the chip brush, so it's really red. While that's drying, I'm going to work on the drawers and prep them for paint. When I'm painting, I have a protocol. Sometimes I forget to do this actually, but you really want to sand down the edges on both the drawers and the frame because you're adding product to those drawers. And sometimes when you have problems with your drawers sticking, it's because you've added paint to them. So I like to sand them down so that I have room to add product because you're adding a couple coats of primer, a couple coats of paint. So I sand the edges and then I'm just going to scuff sand the top. I'm using a machine screw in backwards and I'll tape it in. I'm going to use it as a handle throughout the process of painting. I'll tape off the dovetails to make sure I don't get any paint on that. And then I'm going to wrap the drawer. You can use a couple different things. You can use press and seal, aluminum foil, you could use craft paper, but this seems to be the easiest for me. I take a piece of painter's tape and put it upside down along the front lip of the drawer. Then I'm using the press and seal. I like this just because it's so thin and it sticks to the drawer really well. I put it on the tape and then I wrap it around the drawer. That's going to prevent any overspray from getting on the drawer. Before I put the drawers in, I'm going to sand down the frame. Again, because I'm going to add product to this, I want to make sure I sand this down really good. You can see how red it is. One of my furniture friends, Jeremy, thinks that this was mahogany and that the red I'm seeing is red dye. And I think he's right because it is so red. After I scuff sand it, I'm going to come back on the detailed areas and clean it with some liquid sandpaper. It's not a necessary step, but I like to just make sure I'm hitting all of those little areas, make sure it's really etched up for good adhesion. I'm going to tape off the top just to make sure I don't get any paint on it during the painting process. I'm using shellac as my first coat of primer. This is going to kind of seal the wood grain in case somebody wants to come back later and refinish this. They're not going to have white primer stuck in the wood grain. So it's a great product to use when you are painting a piece. That way it can be refinished later on if somebody chooses to. Now, this is a red dresser, so I am using bin shellac primer. This is going to seal in those tannins so I do not have bleed through. It's probably not as important because I am going to go with a darker color paint, but I like to be on the safe side. You can see I have the drawers in. I'm using that screw as a handle. I'll pull it out, do my paint, and then after that dries, I'll do a quick scuff sand, wipe it down. Then I'll be ready to do my fill with glazing Bondo. The white primer really helps to reveal any areas of imperfection. The glazing Bondo is really good for shallow scratches or dings. And so I'll put that on. After that's dry, I will sand it down and dust it back off, and then it'll get another coat. This time I'm using Bin 123 primer. It's a water-based primer. The only reason I'm using that is simply cost, because the Bin shellac primer is $20 a can and Bin 123 is $10 a can. So once I've used the shellac and I've really sealed everything in, then I really don't need to use it again necessarily. I can switch to the water-based primer. Once that dries, I'll sand it down, tack it back off again, and then I'm ready to paint. I'm trying a new to me paint. This is Sherwin-Williams, their Gallery series. And so I'm excited. It's very similar from what I've heard to the Benjamin Moore Command paint. No top coat is needed, so I'm excited to try it. This is the color Shade Grown. It's a beautiful, kind of a gray-y green, but really rich and beautiful. So I'm super excited to try it. I'm using my Erlex 5700. I didn't end up watering down the paint at all. I did check the viscosity to make sure it was good, and honestly, it was really good right out of the can. So, you can water your paint down if you need to, but I found that I didn't need to water this one down. When the video is not sped up, you can see spraying takes a long time. You have to go slow enough so that the gun has a chance to really spit out all of the little droplets of paint and fill in all the empty spots. So I try to overlap by about 50%. I'm trying to go slow enough to where it can actually lay the paint down, but not so slow that I have drips. And so, you really have to practice, because I tend to go too fast and I have to really kind of slow myself down. After it dries, I'll do a scuff sand, tack it back down, and I'll be ready for my second coat. Now, this has a recoat time of 45 minutes. So, you'll have to check your paint, see if there's humidity issues, but I recoated in about an hour. And so this is wonderful for your production if you're a painter, because it can be recoated so quickly. I only had to do 2 coats and it was beautiful. So now I'm ready to tackle the top. I'm going to pull all this out and then I'll tape it off. And because of those scratches, I felt I better go dark with it. I probably don't need a pre-stain, but I'm not taking any chances because this is mahogany. And so I'm going to use a pre-stain on it. This is a oil-based pre-stain. I'm going to just wipe it on with a rag. You let it set for about 15 minutes, then you wipe off the excess. And then I'm going to use gel stain in the color Kona. So it's a really dark color. I hope it's not too dark, but we'll see. You can see after the pre-stain, I can still see some of those little gouges. So I'm just hoping that the gel stain will cover that up. I'm going to apply the gel stain with a foam brush. So I'll kind of do the edges, and then I like to try to do it in thirds if possible. So I'll go all the way from one end to the other. And it depends on the weather. Sometimes you have to work really quickly because you don't want it to dry too much. So, it depends on your humidity and, like I said, your temperature. So you just kind of want to watch it. Some woods just really soak it up. So I'm going to put it on, and actually I'm going to wipe it back right away because this is really dark. I'm using a lint-free cloth, and I'm just going to go over it and pull off the excess. I'm going to put another coat on the edge because it didn't absorb it as much. So that might take a little bit longer to dry, but I think it'll be worth it in the end. Now I'm ready to do some fun little accents. The 2 top drawers had some bead molding. I'm going to tape that off, and I'm going to use some gold gilding wax to accent those areas. I soaked the hardware in boiled water and vinegar with a little bit of baking soda. And now I'm just going to use some very fine 4/0 steel wool and I'm going to polish them up. After I polish them, I will seal them with some Mohawk lacquer for brass just to kind of retard the tarnishing process. While I'm waiting for my liner to come in, I will clean the drawers. So I clean them really well and I'll refresh the sides with some Danish oil. I want to do a little bit more gilding, so it has some beautiful accents on the sides. So I'm going to tape that off and use the same gold wax and just accent those areas as well. If I mess up at all, I can use just a little bit of mineral spirits and it'll come right off. And this will dry down in 30 days, so I don't have to top coat it with anything. It cures on its own. I chose a liner that I thought would look really beautiful with this set. I know some people don't like it, that sometimes I do line my drawers, but honestly, my buyers really like the lined drawers. I think just, putting their things on a freshly lined drawer is just nice. I'm going to top coat it with an oil-based polyurethane. As it was drying, you can see those little spots were not drying. So I was really crossing my fingers that it was going to dry. I did a second coat just like I did the first, and it's better, but you can still see those little spots. So I really feel like I need to cover it a little bit better. So I'll do another coat and I'm going to put a little bit of wood stain in it mixed in with my top coat, and that's just going to tone it a little bit more to try to kind of blend in those areas. So last night I came through and I did a wet sand on it. So I had 400 grit with some water and I wet sanded it, and then I brushed on another coat. So it's looking really good this morning. If you look in the light, see right there, just tiny bit. I do have a couple, like I would consider those like lap marks. I put it on with a foam brush. So I'm gonna come back through and do another wet sanding, and I think that will be good. Can you believe it? Why is it sometimes always top coats? Yikes. I was super thankful that worked. So just a little bit of the wet sanding will get out any of the dust nibs. Sometimes when you're doing oil-based, because it has a really long open time and it takes a long time to dry, sometimes dust and dust nibs can get in the surface. That's where wet sanding can come in. If it depends on the time of year for me. So sometimes if it's really windy and I've got a lot of stuff blowing in the garage, then I do have to sometimes do this, but it works beautifully. Let's look back at the before. Man, this piece was a little rougher than it looked like just from the front because that top was so damaged. I don't think I've ever come across a piece that had such deep gouges. And, I did a lot of work trying to, get those out. Sometimes you just don't know, once you strip it, sand it, gosh, they were deep, but it had so many beautiful accents. This is a gorgeous dresser, really great solid construction. With that red dye on this, it would have been very difficult to try to strip and redo this one, but I had really some beautiful accents. I loved all the original hardware, and it had those really beautiful designs, kind of a French Empire design. And so, man, after all of that work and a beautiful paint job, here is a finished product. What do you think? I think it's beautiful. I love the color. I wasn't sure. That top, man, it sure gave me a lot of problems, but look at that wood grain. It's just beautiful. And the gold accents really make it for me. It just makes it look very high end. And I do love the drawer liners. I know some people don't like the drawer liners, but like I said, my customers really like them. And I just think it's a beautiful accent to this particular piece. So enjoy some of these videos, and I'll come back at the end. So what do you think? Did you like this one? Are you a fan of this color? This is a beautiful deep green, kind of an earthy green. I think it's in right now, but yet I also think it's a timeless color. So tell me what you think in the comments, and thanks so much for watching.